but with the arriving, I think it's 5 or so players from New Zealand, are they all good to go? How do you plan to sort of reintroduce those guys? Are they all ready to go if you wanted to select them for that USA game?
Yep, sounds like it. I think we've got to get a final check on Shannon. He's been out for a few weeks with his shoulder, but his signs are looking good. But reality is, I think they're going to be all in contention. And, once we all join up late Sunday night, we've got a light Monday that we can have a good assessment of that, and then plan our program. And obviously we'll be looking at a sort of a two-game mindset, because we are sending some players from Washington to Wales on the Friday, so that we can, and that's purely practical with flights availabilities and everything. So, but we'll make that decision when we're over there. But I think we've already flagged that the likes of a Sam, Kane, Dan Coles, particularly guys that have been out for a while with injury, this would be an ideal game, I think, to get them back in there.
Does it feel like you guys have laid down a bit of a benchmark as to the standards expected of this team across the Rugby Championships? I suppose the manner in which you won that Rugby Championship with some dominant performances, does it feel like you've laid down a bit of a benchmark, and now the key for this Northern Tour is to try and keep evolving and keep meeting that standard?
Yeah, very much so, Ollie. Like we've, overall, I think that it's been a pretty successful Rugby Championship, and we're delighted with the wins and then winning the title, and obviously losing the last game hurt a little bit. And the great thing about the Rugby Championship, we finished with those 2 tests against South Africa, and probably got exposed to a lot of what will be coming on the Northern Hemisphere tour. So great preparation for us. We've done the Southern Hemisphere part now. Now we go to the Northern Hemisphere, and it's been 3 years since we've been up there. So it got a whole lot of players that wouldn't have seen a lot of the big stadiums up north and been exposed to rugby there. So again, it's going to be a great learning curve, but we just got to make sure we keep driving our standards, and we want to keep growing and playing well up there.
Can you just talk to, I guess, your week in the Sunshine Coast? Did you achieve what you wanted to tick all those boxes with a sort of training camp type approach to it?
Yeah, we're delighted, really. The Noosa week was effectively a lot of downtime for 6 days. Here it's been pretty full on. We had big days on Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then again today. There's still a chance for them to have a bit of a breather in between that. But the type of sessions have been a bit different, a lot more skill-based, a lot more focused on our learnings from South Africa. And the last 2 training runs, we've really ramped up the physicalness of it. You got 2 weeks since the last game, 3 weeks by the time we play USA. And if someone didn't play South Africa, then it could be 4 weeks. So, it's a balancing act for us. We've got to make sure that we keep the contact and the heavy work up, so that we don't have too big a gap between games for players. In the old days, they'd go back and play a round or 2 of NPC. But so like today's session was pretty full on, but I think they're in a really good spot now to hop on a plane and get ready for the next couple of weeks.
Cool. Brodie talked earlier in the week, Foz, about quite a focus on coming out of that last test against South Africa, with a lot of the stuff you did on the field, and obviously had your review as well mixed in that. I just wonder, with the benefit of a bit of time now, what were your key takeaways out of that last outing?
Probably the last 2 outings, Mark. I mean, if you took away the last minute kicks in both games, it was that they were 2 similar games, very tight. We did a lot of good things. I thought the first half of the second test, up 3 tries to 1, we played well. We came through a rough period, but played well. But we still got to keep learning and I think make on-field decisions a little bit quicker than what we are. We created some space and created options, particularly off line-out time, that were there ready for us to take, and yet we seemed a little bit hesitant to call that. And I think that's just big occasions. It's some new players playing opposition for the first time, and so there's a real learning curve to that. But the positive signs is that we know we're not too far off, and going forward, we're going to a Northern Hemisphere tour where again, we're going to get met with a little bit of the unknown for many players, first time. And I think that's what I'm really excited about with this tournament. We've got a chance to show how much, to keep learning the lessons that when we do get surprised on the park, we need to make and react a lot quicker than what we did.
Cool. And just last one for me, physically, is everyone good there, particularly thinking about Dalton, who obviously wasn't available for these last few tests for you? How's he and everyone else?
Yeah, everyone is 100% fit and available. There might be a few bruises after today, but everyone's training well. There was, there's a couple of management people that we're managers. We always go through, but at this stage, I think we've got 100% availability for next week.
Just wondering about, you just said before about stepping into the unknown. What do you know about where you're going and who you're playing? Have you done much scouting on this American side?
On the American side, we've done a bit. They've actually had a few tests this year, and if you go back to the I think it was the July window, particularly when they played England, actually were very, very competitive in that. It's clearly they're going to lose a few players who are in overseas clubs that won't be released for this, and there's no doubt that that's going to weaken them a little bit. They've also had the disappointment of the World Cup qualifying didn't quite go according to plan. So how they approach this, JB, I'm not really too sure, but from all the messages we've got and signs is that the chance for them to play in a big stadium in their home country and a big fixture in front of their own fans is exciting them. So we are expecting whoever turns up to be a pretty competitive and committed group. So apart from that, don't know a lot.
Oh, good. And have you been to Washington DC before? Is this your first time?
Yeah, first time.
Oh yeah. Anything you particularly wanted to go and see or do in your time off?
Yeah, well, I've heard it's a great city. Obviously, there's a lot of history and or the big power centre of the country, but it's we've sort of reduced our horizons of expectations on areas like that. With the world we're going into, and we know that things that we're seeing now are more going to be probably from a bus, rather from our own bus rather than from actually wandering in and around too much, but I am looking forward to it. I love seeing new places, but we're going to see it through a slightly different lens in this COVID world.
Just cognizant of what you've just said with the sort of the occasion for USA, what it means to them, does it play into your mind at all what a heavy defeat could do to them and the game in the USA? Because being the All Blacks, you carry a lot of pride on the field, and I'm sure you won't be turning down opportunities to run in tries.
Yeah, look, I think that's more, I think if you're a growing, emerging nation, I think they're less worried about the result and they're more excited by the opportunity. I think there's a great chance. I think they'll be seeing it as a chance to measure themselves, to see what a different standard is. And like I said, if you go back to their England game, it wasn't that long ago, they actually were very competitive for a long period of that. So, I think we've got to be careful we don't get confused that a negative result can actually impact negatively on a game in a market. Like I think in this case, there's a whole lot's going to happen around the game. We know there's a certain sense that we are trying to grow the game in another market, and we know that. We're not trying to hide from that. But the flip side of it, at the end of the day, what we're trying to sell is a combative game, a game of skill and pace. And so our job is we want to do what we need to do, and hopefully over there that the fans see that and see something they like.
And obviously, just picking up on some of the words you said there in terms of you're going there as part of a game selling exercise per se. Does that in any way impact the way you're hoping to play there?
No, not really. We've always done this. Like in my time, we've always been looking to how we can go to a tier 2 country to play them, give them an opportunity, and maybe to increase the profile in that market. But I mean, it's not a marketing thing for us, an All Black team. It probably is for an All Black brand, but for an All Black team, it's this is one of 15 tests. We've got some things that we'll go specifically and we've got to work on, and And so we'll set some on-field objectives that are really important for us getting right. And again, if you think about, you know, the way this year's panned out, we've had a big gap since the Rugby Championship. We need a game, and having a hit out like this is going to be fantastic for us.
You mentioned just before Sam Kane and Dan Coles are likely to, you know, get a hit out in this US game. I was just wondering if you'd seen their recent performances and how you felt about how they're tracking.
Yeah, look, I haven't seen the whole games, Christopher, but I've seen some sort of lines on our coding system of what they've been doing. So, you know, it looked like they got through reasonably well. I know Coles, he limped off a little bit, he rolled his ankle, but he's all good to go. But you know, they're guys that we trust a lot. We've had people watching them. We've got Foxy back there, and you know, we're pretty keen that, you know, physically that they're okay. Well, they definitely will need some game time though, and it's just making sure that when we turn up that they are ready to go. And then, you know, the likelihood of them having some good minutes under their belt in USA, I think, is pretty high. And then we can assess their likelihood of when we can introduce them after that.
I wanted to ask one about Geordie Fozzie. He seems to have sort of made that 15 jersey his own in a little way, particularly towards the back end of that Rugby Championship. I suppose his ability to win you games in the dying minutes aside, what have you seen from Geordie and his growth over this Rugby Championship that I suppose makes you confident to keep throwing him into that 15 jersey?
Oh, he's just grown his understanding of the game. You know, like I think he's working hard on his decision making. He's always been a really confident. He's always been confident in his physicality and how he approaches the game from that sense. And so he's just a young guy who's just now progressing with his decision making, his reading, particularly of his defence lines. And again, he's been, you know, really improved in that area. And in terms of the attacking game, it's, you know, like his counterattack stuff has been pretty influential, and we're pretty excited by that. But there's still some other little areas. But I just think he's calmer, he's clearer, and that comes with time in the saddle. And the last 2 or 3 years, he's had, you know, a lot of learning opportunities. He's growing. He's, you know, and so sometimes when you don't get the jersey for a few weeks, it does focus you a little bit more on what you've got to get right. And he's certainly responded. Yeah,
just one more. Fozzie, you mentioned kind of a wee bit of a plan to cover this next couple of weeks, and obviously that early departure of some of the troops to get over to the UK or Wales. Do you have a bit of a two-squad philosophy for this next fortnight, you know, in terms of, you know, in terms of that overall thinking? Is it kind of thinking, you're almost picking 2 squads ahead?
Well, there's no doubt we'll be putting some guys who've had limited game time into the USA game. But, you know, without telling you, there's probably a couple of positions that we're putting guys in the USA game that have really got a good chance to play their way into what, you know, potentially into the Welsh selection. So, you know, we're using it in many ways. We're using it to give game time to some and to grow their experience, but we're also, you know, putting the heat on some areas of our game that we feel we need to keep growing and look at maybe some wider options. So it's a bit of both for us.